Welcome back to whyisrael.org. We're talking with Rabbi Chaim Eisen. We're talking, Chaim, about the conflict really between godliness and godlessness, and how Israel is playing a role in that. I'm wondering if you can just explain to me also the issue of the land, because it seemed to me that the conflict around Israel is arising more and more because of the land issue. Now, is this a conflict about the land? Is this a conflict about this little piece of land in the Middle East? Or is there some deeper perspective here? Is it really a battle about the forces of godliness and the forces of godlessness?
The way you've asked the question is inevitably at least half the answer. That is, I think we appreciate in considering what has taken place in world history and in Middle East history over the course of the last 150 years, that the issue really essentially is not the land per se. When Mark Twain traveled the land of Israel in the 1860s, he found the land in a state of utter desolation. He describes himself going from Jerusalem to Jaffa, which is cutting clear across the country without encountering a single living soul. The land was completely depleted. Demographic estimates place the total population of the land as 50,000 or less. The Arab population in the land of Israel began to grow when Jews repopulated the land and made the desert bloom and created employment opportunities, whereupon many of the landless peasants of the feudal Arab world flocked to the land of Israel to take advantage of the new opportunities that were available there. The issue wasn't a matter of the land per se then, but rather ultimately a matter of who exercises dominion. Even though there was no state of Israel, there were murderous pogroms that were perpetrated in 1929, in 1935, and of course again in the years leading up to the establishment of the State of Israel. The question fundamentally was never a matter of the land per se, but again, a matter of this global conflict over God. With respect to the land, I'm going to take a track that might seem at odds with the idea that is classically articulated in Zionist circles. The land doesn't belong to Israel. Rather, as God makes it very clear in Scripture, the land belongs to Him. In the prophecy of Joel, in chapter 4, verse 2, I know in some Christian Bibles it's chapter 3, verse 2, I will gather all of the nations and bring them down to the valley of Yehoshaphat and judge them there over my people, my inheritance Israel, whom they scattered among the nations, and my land that they partitioned. The land is also called God's land in the description in Ezekiel of the battle of Gog and Magog against God and His people. And in general, it seems that God identifies the land explicitly as His land, specifically at those junctures in history, when people seem to be ignoring that essential reality. It's God's land, and ultimately it's important for us to emphasize, it is the land that He gave to the nation of Israel with a mission for the world. The land is God's, given to Israel as the classics of Jewish thought so aptly expressed it, as the means through which to direct all of the world to God.
So it's important that the Jews come back to the land.
It is essential. It is through that Israel is summoned to discharge its mission to be a light to the world.
Okay, good. Thank you, Chaim, for sharing with us. And next time we'll talk a little bit more about how we as Christians should relate to this and how we can work together to do God's will. Thank you.
Thank you.